Hi everyone, I am Earl Lazo. I am a chemical engineer by profession and I am a scientist and a low carb practitioner and advocate since 2018. I am currently based here in Europe, living in Stockholm, Sweden. So I will be sharing some things about low carb here, touching lightly on topics such as the European legislations about low carb and, of course, share some local low carb dishes across the European continent. The low carb diet, particularly the high fat, low carb keto diet, has exploded in most parts of the world, especially in the US. And in the most recent years, it took off also here in Europe. This way of eating or lifestyle or trend to some has actually entered the general food mainstream, where even big companies launched products catering to those who follow this lifestyle. Like these huge soda product makers coming up with diet soda this, diet soda that. We all know that the low carb diet is basically and obviously eating food that are zero to low in carbohydrates with more focus on proteins and fats. Focusing on more fats gives you the ketogenic diet. I'm not going through these details because I am sure a lot of the other speakers in this event have already touched on that. And there are also a lot of resources online that we could learn from, so we can all just go there in our free time to explore. But for those who aren't as informed, this eating pattern has been shown to reduce blood sugar, help people overcome their weight problems, and heal them from lifestyle diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, autoimmune diseases, and so many others. When we restrict our dietary sugar and carb intake, we deplete the glucose reserves in our body, and we in turn use fats, our own body fats, and convert it to ketones to use as energy. High blood sugar and high insulin levels are the main cause of inflammations, and so simply by reducing the sugar and carb intake can help improve our health conditions. Anyway, let's go to Europe. If we focus and think about Europe, at first glance, this part of the world may not seem like a place with culinary traditions and cultures that would be open to radically reducing carb intake. Think about the pizzas and the pastas of Italy, the fine wines and breads and pastries of France. Oh, heavenly croissants. The potato-focused staples in Ireland, the cultured dairy products, the crisp and soft, often sugared breads in Sweden, and other similar high-carb culinary staples of several European countries generally account for a moderate to high intake of carbs on a daily basis. The industrialized food system overtook these most traditional cuisines, and the Europeans saw that their diets are being overrun with excessive added sugars and highly refined carbs. And this is characteristic of an industrialized, globalized, and extremely processed food diet. With this reality, the Europeans have started seeking for low-carb food alternatives for a healthier diet. Although the low-carb trend is getting really popular here in Europe, it doesn't mean that the European Union or EU authorities are similarly on board with low-carb nutritional paradigms. In fact, the EU Commission has a very extensive food labeling legislation in place that strictly regulates health and nutrition claims on food products sold within the EU countries. The EU Commission has a strictly delimited list of permitted nutrition claims for food products. However, low sugar, sugar-free, no added sugars, source of protein, high protein are some of those permitted claims, which should make some of us low-carb advocates happy. Though Europe's legislations do not specifically mention carbohydrates or low-carb claims, these permitted nutrition claims also mentions information like reduction in the name, for example, of a particular nutrient, such as carbohydrates. So low carb claims or reduced carb claims should be able to be made when the reduction in the carb content of a specific food is at least 30% when compared to a similar product. Cauliflower pizza dough, for example, might be eligible to make this claim when compared to a regular pizza dough. Now, enough of these legislations. Let's talk about European food. Earlier, we mentioned some of the famous food here in this part of the world are pizzas and pastas. Not only here, but surely in most parts of the world, a lot of alternatives have been made to make these famous dishes low carb. People started to use cauliflower as dough base. Some even use mozzarella cheese with egg and almond flour to make the fathead dough base. The toppings generally are low carb, and we also have control of that, so no issues there. For pasta, instead of using the high carb real wheat-based pasta noodles, people here are using eggplants for their lasagnas and zucchinis for their spaghettis, and it's pretty much similar to what others are doing all around the world. I lived in Ireland for 3 years, and I learned when I was there that one of the most famous food in Ireland is their stews. But most often this is loaded with potatoes, which is high carb. But generally speaking, if we look at all the other ingredients of this staple dish in Ireland, they are basically low carb, like the carrots, celery, and spices, and of course the beef that are used to make this dish. So if you pay particular attention to the littlest ingredients used in this dish, you are still able to make it low carb. Ireland, by the way, is heaven for good, fresh beef. Sweden has this famous food called kalops, which is a rich and comforting beef stew prepared with chunks of beef that are slowly cooked with onions and spices such as whole peppercorns, bay leaves, and allspice. I've yet to try that, but I will try one day soon. I have asked some friends in Italy, and they shared me this dish called carne cruda all'albese, which is an Italian spin on steak tartare, prepared mainly around Alba, which is a town in Italy famous for its precious white truffles. This dish is made with raw, finely chopped beef, flavored with salt, pepper, lemon juice, and garlic. The dish is often served with thin shavings of Parmesan cheese, topped with chopped and roasted hazelnuts and white truffles, or just plain mushrooms, as truffles are expensive. I have friends in Poland, and they've shared with me this dish called wołowina pieczona, or roast beef, which is a Polish meat specialty. It is usually made with beef again that is rubbed with dried herbs, seasoned with salt and pepper, and then roasted in a baking dish until tender and moist. The meat is sometimes soaked overnight in a marinade of mustard, dried herbs, garlic, and seasonings before cooking. Now I'm very, very hungry. 2 things to close this talk. 1, if we look closely, and as we can see here, traditional dishes are generally low carb. If not, it can be turned low carb. And that goes without saying that you could do that with any other dishes, regardless of which part of the world you are in. In the end, it is still all about knowledge and knowing which types of food ingredients to use. If we will always just stick to the most basic of ingredients, which are real, whole, and fresh, and as long as we know it is low carb, we can never go wrong. We will always have options. 2, different places will have different specialties, and these specialties are dictated by some ingredients that are native only to these countries, and that's what make these dishes local and special. But in this highly commercial world, whatever special ingredients you need are now as accessible as ever, so we can recreate these dishes wherever and whenever possible. I haven't tried some of the food I mentioned, but I think one of these days I will try to recreate them at home, and there's going to be just me in my kitchen working these dishes out. That's a shameless plug there, by the way, of my Facebook and Instagram pages called Me in My Kitchen. Please like and follow. That's just a very tiny and quick peep at how low carb is here in Europe. Wish we had more time to talk, but I hope you still found that interesting. Stay low carb. Bye.